René Descartes' introduction. René Descartes was one of the most famous philosophers and mathematicians that ever lived. He published his first major work, Meditations de Prima Philosophia, Meditations on First Philosophy, in 1641. He died in 1650 at the age of 59 from pneumonia, following a night spent discussing philosophy with friends, discussing theology and science. René Descartes was born to Joachim Descartes and Jean Brochet on March 31st, 1596, in La Haye, France, near Tours. You're not going to find the answer here, but it's worth knowing that René Descartes was born on March 31st, 1596, in La Haye, France, near Tours. His parents were Joachim Descartes and Jean Brochet, and they lived in an area called Le Mans. The son of a lawyer and a well-to-do family, he received his education at home by reading books from an early age, and he never attended school again after he left home at age 12, according to some sources. In 1619, Descartes began incorporating his philosophical ideas into his physics. In 1619, Descartes began incorporating his philosophical ideas into his physics. This was the year that he wrote Discourse on Method, which was an attempt to explain how humans can know anything at all. It's not hard to see how this could have been connected with Descartes' physics after all. Knowing about something entails being able to explain it as well. In this essay I will discuss two things. Firstly, what exactly is meant by saying that someone knows something. Secondly, how we might go about proving what a person knows based on their actions in life or nature or both. The year 1628 saw the publication of Descartes' work on meteorology, Des Météores, the meteors. The year 1628 saw the publication of Descartes' work on meteorology, Des Météores, the meteors. This was a collection of 12 essays which were published in Dutch and French, with an accompanying Latin translation. Descartes was influenced by Pierre Gassendi's ideas about the nature of light and heat. He believed that they were two different substances. He went so far as to publish an essay entitled On Light, which argued that sunlight was actually composed of particles traveling at high speeds through space. In 1631, he published his first major work, Meditations de Prima Philosophia, Meditations on First Philosophy. In 1631, he published his first major work, Meditations de Prima Philosophia, Meditations on First Philosophy. The book is a collection of essays on the nature of knowledge and how it differs from other kinds of knowledge. Descartes argues that there are three types of truths: mathematical truths, which can be proved without doubt, moral truths, which require our approval, and metaphysical ones like God's existence or the soul's immortality. He also developed what would become known as the methodological doubt, namely, instead of beginning with some basic assumption about the world around him, such as I exist, or the sun rises, you should start by assuming nothing at all and try to discover whether anything else exists beyond your perception. This method leads us into skepticism. We begin by asking ourselves if any information we receive has been confirmed by other sources so far. If not, then perhaps this information isn't reliable. If yes, then what does this mean about how much trust should be placed in our senses? In 1640, Descartes went to the Dutch Republic because it afforded him more intellectual freedom than anywhere else in Europe. René Descartes, 1596–1650, was a French philosopher and mathematician. He is one of the most important figures in the history of modern philosophy, although he is often known only as a mathematician, physicist, or scientist, rather than as an epistemologist or ethicist. His most famous philosophical work is Discourse on Method, which has been called one of the foundations for modern science. In this work, he argues that mathematics can serve as a foundation for all truths about nature. Therefore it may be used to establish knowledge through rational analysis rather than faith alone. In 1644 he published his Principles of Philosophy, a synthesis of science based on an all-encompassing theory. In 1644 he published his Principles of Philosophy, a synthesis of science based on an all-encompassing theory. The book was a success and became one of the most influential works in European intellectual history. Descartes' philosophy is often considered as one of the foundations of modern philosophy because it helped lay down many key concepts still used today: Cartesian coordinate system X, Y, Z Cartesian coordinate system X, Y, Z Cartesian plane on October 19, 1649. Queen Christina called upon Descartes to be her teacher of philosophy. On October 19, 1649, Queen Christina called upon Descartes to be her teacher of philosophy. He declined the offer but went anyway. In Sweden he taught the Queen mathematics and philosophy until his death in 1650. After publishing controversial theological treatises and suffering criticism in the Catholic countries where they were published, Descartes moved to the Netherlands and decided against publishing anything else until after his death. Once you've read the above, you will be able to understand why Descartes' work was controversial in Catholic countries. For example, in 1637 he published Meditations on First Philosophy, which contained his famous statement that I think, therefore I am. This book sparked controversy because it questioned whether or not God exists and was generally seen as atheistic by Orthodox Christians at the time. In 1641 he published Principles of Philosophy, which included more material questioning whether or not God exists, but withdrew this second edition after complaints from Catholics who attacked him as an atheist. Sometime during the night from February 11th to 12th, 1650, a few weeks after the publication of his Principles of Philosophy, he died from pneumonia after a night spent at conversation with friends discussing philosophy and theology. Descartes died in 1650 of pneumonia that he contracted during a night spent at conversation with friends discussing philosophy and theology. The following is the text of his will. René Descartes was one of the most famous philosophers and mathematicians that ever lived. René Descartes was a French philosopher and mathematician. He was born in La Haye, France in 1596, which makes him one of the most famous philosophers to ever live. Descartes' father died when he was young, leaving him with his mother, who had 5 children. When René was around age 6 or 7 years old, she sent him to study at Paris with a tutor named Mersenne, who taught him Latin grammar as well as other subjects such as mathematics and philosophy, in particular Aristotelianism. It's believed that Mersenne may have influenced Descartes' later work on geometry. However, this is unconfirmed speculation because there aren't any surviving letters between them discussing these topics. Conclusion: we can't wait to see what's next on the horizon for René Descartes. The world needs more philosophers like him, and that is why we need you.